Yeah. I mean, I didn't work in too many places. I would love to work for Scottish Water, and I know you've worked for them. There's something about it, whether it's just the Scottish in my blood or what, I
Scotland.
don't know, but
Yeah.
I get it.
I think they're very good. Yeah, I
Yeah,
actually really think Scottish Water are very good.
yeah,
Obviously, they were saved by the fact that they're public
yes,
instead of private, which has made England is an uproar about
yeah,
the English water companies being owned by Macquarie Bank or whoever it is and not doing what they should be. But Scottish Water took asset management seriously from the date of its foundation. It was sort of basically founded in 2001
mm,
out of the regional water authorities and was amalgamated in one thing called Scottish Water, but kept in public ownership, reporting to the Scottish government. And for whatever reason, they took asset management seriously from day one. And I think that they're quite sophisticated. I mean,
well,
again, Scotland is a wonderful country
yeah,
anyway, beautiful.
but
But I loved, I worked with them until really, until I went to Australia. I worked with them a lot.
mm,
And again, being with them in the early days, I really enjoyed it. So
mm,
you're right. But my thing about Scottish Water is that they don't really need help anymore.
yeah,
They don't really need
I've
consultants.
yeah,
They know what they're doing.
I've
So,
seen the
which is a bit of a
success.
shame, but
I've seen the
yeah,
success, and I've read all
that's right.
about them. I've looked at some
Yeah,
of their material. It's on the web and stuff like that. And it was from that I got this feeling they're doing something good. They're doing something because
they're
they were
good.
also
Yeah,
contracting
quite.
overseas.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yes, of course. No, they're very good. But I was very
mm,
lucky because I
mm,
we'd been working with East of Scotland Water Authority, and we working for somebody who then became the can't remember what his job was actually,
mm,
not ops manager, but anyway, very senior on Scottish Water. And he brought us in to work on the asset management strategy and the asset information strategy, which was completely fascinating. And when
mm,
it's coming together, it's still in separate organizations, but the first thing they're doing is writing an asset management strategy.
yeah,
So the writing was on the wall that they were going to be good. So yes, yeah, definitely
and it
worth a
shows up.
visit for sure.
It shows up,
Yes.
and yeah, you can see it in the writing, and they might not call it
Yeah.
asset management. They might not do, but you can see it in their reporting and their
Yeah.
planning, and it's all there. Foundations are
Yeah.
all there. They're doing well. You can't
Yeah,
knock
no,
it.
I think so.
Mm.
Yes. So, so I have very fond memories of that. And I was very lucky in who I got to work with because, of course, I also worked with London Underground
Yes.
at a very strange time in their history when politically they'd been forced to
Oh yeah.
outsource,
Oh yeah.
and it was a mistake. Of course,
Mm.
most people at London Underground thought it was a mistake; they didn't have a
Yeah.
choice. And there's a game you can play, which is when did you know that the London Underground PPP would fail? And lots of people would go, I knew before the
Yeah.
contracts were signed, the way it was set up. But I worked with them while they were preparing for the contracts and then after the contracts about how to. And that again was a fascinating
Yeah.
place to be. I worked for the asset management team in London
Mm.
Underground, but working with the asset management teams in the private consortia where one of them more or less knew what they were doing and did some good work. The other two, I would say, it was they knew less about asset management and a lot less about running a railway than
Yeah.
London Underground.
Well,
So, but that was absolutely fascinating time.
I remember when it came out, PPPs. I think it was the rail. They're asking the trains to be on time and all the rest of it, and the rail, they had to spend £15 billion or some enormous figure fixing up their infrastructure before they could
Well,
get
of course,
there.
that's why the government wanted
Mm,
to have PPP because
mm,
it hoped that private industry would invest. But you know the problem. I mean, the private industry doesn't want to spend any money; it's
no,
not going to get back. I think London Underground didn't conceal the fact that they needed a lot of work,
yeah,
capital investing. Um, uh, so, so I don't think it was. I don't think it was. I think the private consortia were naive,
mm,
but I don't think anybody was hiding from them that they really needed to spend a lot of money. And I think at least two of the consortia just didn't believe it. They thought that they could make lots of money without investing, and
well, I
they
think
got
that's,
shut out basically.
yeah,
Yeah,
I think
because
that's
they
half the
weren't doing
problem.
anything. They weren't
Yeah,
upgrading. They weren't doing what they had to do.
it's happened here as well. I think
Oh,
that's because they have this belief. that they don't spend capital, they don't want to. They can keep running it for the term of the contract, and then at the end of the contract, they can leave and money with them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. And I don't think that was possible for London Underground. I think the commitments they were making were much beyond their capacity.
yeah,
It's interesting. I work with, not with Lyonnaise, although of course I know them, but Veolia
yeah,
runs a few PPP, no, probably PFI. Can't remember what they're
yeah.
literally called, but where they build and run big
Yes,
sewage treatment works
yeah,
in Scotland and Northern Ireland for the public agencies. And that was very interesting because some good asset managers, English, British, went to work for Veolia in
mm,
how to make sure that they could hand back these wastewater treatment works without huge penalties
yeah,
for poor condition, and how to do that. And we work with them, AMCL work with them, and that was very interesting. I still don't think it's a very good model, but I have to say, Viola did, of course, and they'd done a lot in Australia that's
yeah. They've done an
equivalent.
enormous amount.
About, okay, you really do
Mm,
actually have to spend some capital because
yes,
otherwise you're going to get for swinging
mm,
penalties at the end
yes,
for just letting the works run down
yeah.
from you. So that's all a very interesting area, but it's not one that's really worked very well. But
It's
some
an
people
interesting
understood
area
that it took more than others. It is
because
an interesting area.
I mean, I did the due diligence on all the toll roads in Australia and
Oh
Transurban,
yeah,
right? And yeah, they've got a good relationship in Melbourne in particular, and they've also bought, the toll roads in America as well and a few other places. So
oh yes.
they're one that's on board and very successful. Um,
Yeah, you have to do good asset management, of course,
yeah,
to be
you do,
successful in those things.
you do, and that's what they've done. They had the right people. I worked with the person who was employed as manager of assets, if you like, for CityLink,
Yeah,
and that then grew from that Transurban, and he's now international manager of Shebang.
yeah,
So
fantastic. Yes,
it's one of those good stories.
yeah, yeah. Well, I think perhaps there were some people learned a few lessons from early days
Mm,
where it didn't work so great. But no,
yeah,
it's very, very interesting area.
it
So
is.
yeah,
So
so
in Canada, so they had. I mean, they certainly show it. I mean, I look at the material. I mean,
cities.
whenever I get a spare 5 minutes, I'm on the internet and I'm scouring around
Yeah,
seeing who's doing what, and who's doing some good stuff. And certainly in
yeah.
Canada, they're doing good stuff. Um, is anyone in Europe? You work in Europe? Oh,
A little bit. We
well,
Well,
at the
it's interesting.
moment,
I have taught a few
yep,
companies in Europe, in Spain, in Denmark,
yep,
and we've had taught Norwegian, Swedes. So we've definitely, there is some, but actually, just as a matter of interest, AMCL just bought a Dutch asset management consultancy
okay,
called IES, who I liked. Actually, I was the person who knew them, and they kind
hmm,
of approached me to say that their owner wanted to sell. Would AMCL be interested? So that was, I guess it was this year, and they and no, I was working with them on an IEM committee actually, and on the register of asset management
hmm,
professionals, and it was very interested in. They do training and consultancy, and although they're based in the Netherlands, they do a lot of work with things like Germany. So
hmm,
and it was interesting talking to them about who's good in Europe. I don't have personal experience of that, but they'd say that some countries in Europe are better than others. So I think that's a fascinating. I'm sort of hoping I might sneak a bit of, maybe through IES, get to do something in mainland Europe again. But when I was talking to IES, I asked them kind of what you were asking me, which is, well, when did the Netherlands pick up asset management? What really? And they were saying it's very similar time to the UK, that they weren't really doing anything until
hmm,
this century, and so started in the noughties, but sort of accelerated in the teens. But I had already met some Dutch companies who were quite pro-gas, people like that, who are doing interesting things. So I think there are lots of interesting things going on. It's slightly a language barrier,
Yeah.
although IES work mostly in English, as it
Mm.
happens, even in Germany. But it would be great to know more. So I'm hoping through this collaboration with IES to really find out more.
Mm.
Penny, who's a great Germanophile, always wanted to do something. She did, of course, consultancy for, or she was involved in a Suez board. So
Okay.
was working in France, but she always wanted to work with Germany. And so it's always well, we don't know anybody in Germany
Mm.
and we don't really know. But it'd be great, wouldn't it, to be able to.
Well, I had a funny experience. There was a water conference in
And we've worked
Sydney.
with people like
Yeah.
Austrian, rail and things. There are
Mm.
all sorts of contacts. But yeah.
Yeah, I had this experience in Sydney. There was a water conference, international water conference. And I went to it and I was sitting in the audience with some other people. And this person from East Germany talking about how they need to spend dollars and all the rest of it. And he put
Yeah,
up a
yeah.
slide and he quoted one of the things I said. And the whole audience turned around and looked at me and I don't remember saying that, but if he says I said it, that sounds good.
Isn't that
He's pulled it from
wonderful?
something, you know. He's pulled it from something.
Yes.
And I tried to get
Yeah.
hold of him after it, but
Yeah.
missed him.
Well,
He was
that's
his friend.
fantastic. You know you're succeeding when somebody who doesn't you never even met quotes
Yeah,
you.
he
Yeah,
quotes you. You
exactly.
think,
Yeah.
still trying to
So
work out where I said it, but anyway, it's irrelevant now. But yeah, so they were
yeah, so
obviously
for
interested.
sure.
Enjoyed this video? Press the like button and subscribe. If you'd like to see more, please click on the Patreon link below and sign up.